ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, please welcome High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, Mr. Josep Borrell. Yes, please do. Yes.
Better, no?
Yes, better.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, dragi priatelji, today marks a crucial milestone. 25 years have passed since the end of a devastating war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and their wounds are still visible today. We remember the tragedies of the past with the promise that never will let them happen again, and to celebrate the will and capacity to live peacefully together, and the will also to build a better future for all. Today, in my visit to Sarajevo, in this historical moment, I would like to share a message which is twofold. First, that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies in the European Union. This is our common goal and commitment. I want to stress the word commitment. To achieve this objective, the political leadership of this country will have to take its responsibilities to act in order to make possible the reforms that the country needs. We don't have lessons to give, but maybe we can share some of our experience in order to help. And help is much needed because the situation is serious on multiple fronts, and the time is decisive to take action now. Let me explain what I mean, why. This country, full of churches and minarets, churches and mosques, has always played a prominent role in the history of Europe. For centuries, this country has been the point where the East and West meet and blend. It has been the border of two religions, the border of two empires. And when mosques call for prayer, is in harmony with the ringing of church bells, while a synagogue stands beside them. We found here the marks of the three religions that for years they were able to live in peace, like in my country, in Spain, in Middle Ages, in the city of Toledo. Cultural plurality gives an enormous strength. It's a wealth. But for those who want to keep divisions alive, it can also be twisted into a weapon. Diversity is a wealth, but it can be turned into a weapon. And history has taught us that divisions can be misused and become toxic, as it happened 20 years ago, when it turned neighbors into enemies, and families were torn apart, and childhood friends were taking up arms against each other. It has happened many times in many places along the history. Sarajevo is not a single case, but it was an awful one. In a way, the European Union, which I have the honor to represent here today, and Bosnia and Herzegovina are twins. We are founded on the same values of reconciliation, and it came into being around the same time, 1992. And that year, the European Union succeeded to become a monetary union and build a view on the future. And Bosnian citizens voted for a referendum for independence. And just like the founders of Europe, there are many here in Bosnia and Herzegovina that show a strength in diversity. Our motto in the European Union is united on diversity. The Union doesn't cancel diversity, and diversity doesn't prevent unity. By the contrary, when you unite diversity, you become stronger. And the people were inspired by the optimism spreading across the continent in the early 90s. And they worked hard to build a country on the narrative that it would eventually join the European Union. And it is something that most of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian people really wish. We have another links among us. From its beginning, the European Union has been a project aimed at overcoming the tragedies of the past. And one of these tragedies started here in this city. And another tragedy followed. And the continent almost committed suicide. We Europeans, we kill each other. We destroy each other. We see hate and death among us. But we have been able to overcome these tragedies. We have been able to build unity where it was differences and fights. We have been able to create peace, stability and prosperity across the European continent that has been full of blood and death for centuries. It is for all these reasons that we say that bringing the Western Balkans to the European Union is essential to complete peace in the continent. I know that becoming member of the European Union remains a key objective for the people of this country. More than 80% of the citizens support this purpose. This will unite political parties and the general public alike in a common endeavor, pursuing a goal that is shared by such an impressive amount of the people. And I have to say that on the last years, progress has been made in many fields toward building a stable and democratic Bosnia and Herzegovina, but at the same time, I have to recognize that journey is not over. A lot remains to be done. During all this time, during these 25 years, the European Union has stood by Bosnian side. This was not only about financial support or technical advice, but also showing presence during the hardest moment of the conflict. And this presence is still here. I've just been visiting the barracks of Euroforce that remains here in order to help to the stability of the country. This presence includes my own country, Spain. I remember very well that the first soldier killed in action on a mission out of Spain was here in Sarajevo, when they were coming with humanitarian help to the population. This remained to the past. We have to remind it, but let's look to the future. We have responsibilities for the future, much more than from the past. And to face the future, much work still remains. Governments, political leaders need to deliver better to their people. And people expect their elected representative to deliver. Here in Bosnia, as elsewhere in the country, in the region, in the Balkans, deep-rooted political divides, shortfalls in the justice system, corruption, and persistent negative rhetoric continues to block progress. We have to recognize that, unhappily, it is still like this. And citizens, and I've been talking with some of them, do not understand why their future is held back by political and administrative weakness, with their roots in the past when they want to be projected into the future. They have a wider view going beyond Bosnia and beyond the region. And also thanks to the digital world and visa liberalization, they can move, they can watch, they can know what's happening further of their borders. And the expectations are high, and they need to be met. Failure to deliver on reforms will not only slow the path to the European Union, people will continue voting with their feet and leave the country. 5% of the population have already done it. Today, 25 years ago, the Dayton Peace Agreement gave this country a complex governance setup. I think that this setup requires coordination and cooperation among and across the governance structure of Bosnia, and this requires political will. But with political will, you can make anything work. But too often, we see political infighting and impasse. Let's use this anniversary to be a turning point to move from post-war to pre-accession, to accelerate the process, and to move from Dayton to Brussels. From Dayton to Brussels. This is the travel that this society wants to do. But for that, reform of the institutional and legal framework is needed. Transforming the Dayton architecture into one that provides a foundation for a functioning society based on the principles of democracy and the protection of human rights. This has to be inclusive. This will require time and a broad national debate. As I said at the beginning, we don't have lessons to give, but maybe some experience to share. I am from Spain. And my own country, I think, Spain is an example of a decentralized state where people with different identities have been able to overcome the legacy of a civil war, an awful civil war, and 40 years of a dictatorship. This was an often hard and painful process, with nationalist and divisional conflict, the scars of which are still there. But we overcome them. How do we do? How do we face these transformations? Allow me some words about this experience. We did three things. We adopt democracy, we reconcile from a civil war whose winner had been in power for 40 years, and we joined the European Union. We adopted democracy almost overnight. All political parties were legalized, election held, a constitution written and voted. This was a big achievement because it was a compromise of the two sides that had been fighting the war. We reconciled. Reconciliation was the most important step towards our future. We decided that the best thing to do was an amnesty. Maybe some escape to the justice. I am not saying that it was the right thing, best thing to do. I'm just saying what we did. And 7 years after Franco's death, a bunch of socialists won the elections. I was one of them. And it became an obsession to become member of the European Union. I remember very well how many transformations we had to do in order to become member of the European Union. It took almost 15 years of waiting. And in the meantime, we did a comprehensive plan to change our society on the European perspective. And, you know, reconciliation became almost a byproduct of the busy work that we had to do in order to become fully Europeans. Many thousands died in our civil war, but reconciliation was done, and our income per capita kept growing, and we closed the gap with Europe. And I think that on doing that, we made the biggest transformation of our modern history. Schools, hospitals, roads, tribunals, and all that makes a country a place to live. And that's, my dear friend from Bosnia and Herzegovina, is something that you can do if you want, and I'm sure you want. If you have the political will, you will succeed. And the European Union will remain at your side. The European Union is an integrator. As an integrator of diversity, is a reconciliator of past enemies. The European Union helps peace and brings prosperity. But the requirement for European Union membership include a well-functioning democracy, a strong rule of law, and the upholding of individual fundamental rights. These requirements not only help strengthen and protect your countries, your cultural, your ethnic and religious pluralism, it also helps citizens, business and civil society. The road that you have ahead of you is clear. There is 14 key priorities endorsed by the European Council in December last year 1 year ago, that provide a roadmap setting up the reforms needed towards European Union accession. It's not going to be easy. The reforms needed are deep, and they must make the country's governance more effective. They will, at some time, need to include changes to the institutional and electoral framework at the constitutional level where necessary. But only with determination on fulfilling this task, Bosnia and Herzegovina can advance on the European path. And it is on the hands of the political leaders of this country, and they must show ownership for the needed change. And be sure that the engagement and solidarity is real and visible from the European Union for all who want to use it. We offer support both politically and financially. For example, our new economic and investment plan for the region that includes 9 billion euros of grants and guarantees aiming to mobilize up to 20 billion of euros in investments. That, together with the green agenda in the Western Balkans, will help the long-term economic recovery of the region through better connectivity and transition to a green and digital economy. This will foster regional convergence and help the Western Balkans to get closer to the European Union single market. But boosting investments and economic growth will only be possible if it is coupled with the implementation of fundamental reforms based on European values. They are essential for the creation of an environment favorable to entrepreneurship, to job creation, and sustainable investment. Ladies and gentlemen, the rejection of conflict, the rejection of hate and division, the acceptance of cooperation and reconciliation is central to the European Union and to our values, and so is for the Bosnia and Herzegovina and its people. I want to insist that Europe is a project for peace and for people, and yet history shows that reconciliation is a process, not an event. It's not something that happens overnight. You go to bed and the following day you awake reconciled. No, it takes a process, an everyday work that needs to be reaffirmed persistently every day. And we expect that from the aspiring members of the Union to engage in this continuous process of reconciliation. There are different types of political process. There are among the politicians, and I am one of them, you found blamers who spend their time blaming the others for the problems. You found commentators that just explain things, but they don't take action. And you found doers, people who act, people who react, people that transform, that create institutions, that create political will, create cohesion, create unity. And Bosnia and Herzegovina has to find this way, the way of positive creation, the way of willing, the way of ambitious, the way of having a prospect to become, as many others before you have done, a place where political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion are the landmarks of a civilization. That's my message. Everything is possible. And Europe is there to help. And I hope that we can do it together. Let's make good use of these 25 years from Dayton, from the moment where the war stopped and a fragile peace started. It is still fragile, it is still not complete on the spirits, on the memories of the people, but there is a big and enormous political challenge for all of you to win. And in this battle, the battle to win the future, the European Union will be at your side. And my visit here, my presence today on this very special day is especially done in order to send this message to all of you. Your future is in the way to Europe, but your future has to build by yourself. No one else will do, but we can help. Thank you, and good travel to Europe.
Mr. Borrell, thank you for your public address from Dayton to Brussels. Respectful members of the media, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.